Klobuchar, Sanders, Lautenberg, Lieberman, Baucus, Clinton, Whitehouse, Carper, Cardin, and Boxer. All right? Senator Inhofe.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and Senator Gore. I enjoyed it very much. Great opening statement.
Thank you.
I don't agree with it, but I agree with your history, and that was very good. What I'm going to do is, since she's allowed me to go 3 minutes over, and I'm going to try to make all of this in a very short period of time, I've structured my questions so they're yes or no questions, and they don't require a lot of elaboration. So let me start off with 4, and these should be pretty easy. I know the answer because I've heard some quotes from you that lead me to believe what the answer is. First of all, yes or no, do you believe that human-caused global warming is a moral, ethical, and spiritual issue affecting our survival?
Yes, I do.
Yes or no, do you believe that reducing fossil fuel-based energy usage will lead to lower greenhouse gas emissions?
It depends on what the substitutes are, but basically, yes. I don't think we. I think that we can capture and sequester the carbon and continue using carbon-based fuels.
Very good. And yes or no, do you believe that home energy use is a key component, not the only component, but a key component to overall energy use?
I believe that buildings, as well as cars and trucks and factories, are definitely a part of the problem, yes.
All right. Now, I'd like to put up the little pledge thing here. I'm going to ask you if you would like to commit here today. You know how many hundreds of thousands of fans you have out there that would like to follow your lead. And this pledge merely says, as you can read it up there, that you're agreeing to consume no more energy in your residence than the average American household by 1 year from today. Not right now. You got a whole year to look to try to do this. Now, the one thing I'd like to have you not use in response to this question, which is a yes or no question, is the various gimmicks. Now, I have something I want to submit for the record, Madam Chairman, that talks about the effects, the offsets, and the credits are gimmicks used by the wealthy, so they don't have to change their lifestyles. And I have an article that is last Sunday's United Kingdom Times. I'd like to add, submit for the record at this time.
You may.
All right. What's your answer?
Well, first of all, Senator, thank you so much for your question.
All right. I noticed Tipper didn't say thank you for the question.
Oh, I'm sure she would, but
you're welcome.
Yeah. You know, one of the other recommendations that I would have is that you also set standards for green energy produced by utilities. And one reason I say that in response to what you're saying here is that that's what we purchase, and we pay more for it because it's still relatively uncommon.
Senator Gore,
and if I could just
well, you can't.
If you could allow, you've asked the senator an important question. He's answering it. Give him a minute or so.
If you just stop the clock during this time,
no, I'm not going to stop the clock. He has a minute to answer. How can you ask a question and not give a man a minute to answer? Please.
Yeah, we purchase wind energy and other green energy that does not produce carbon dioxide, and that does cost a little more now, and that is one of the reasons why it costs a little more. We're also in the process of renovating an old home, and we live not far from where Lamar and Honey Alexander do, and we.
Senator Gore, you had so much more time. I'm going to have to.
Could I make one other point? Because a lot of communities actually have laws preventing the installation of solar photovoltaic.
So I assume the answer is no. Let's go to the next question.
And if I could continue, I do believe that there should be a federal provision that overrides any local restrictions.
All right, Senator Gore, I'm very sorry. I don't want to be rude, but from now on, I'm going to ask you to respond for the record in writing, since you're not going to respond.
Well, if I choose to respond to you verbally here, I hope that'll be okay too.
If it's a very brief response. All right. I'm sure you read the New York's article that quoted the scientists. I mentioned this in my opening statement about they're criticizing you for some of your being too alarmist and hurting your own cause. Now, I'll ask you to respond in writing for that one, because that would be a very long response, I'm afraid. Now, it seems that
Well, I would like to
everybody
respond.
on global warming and the
respond,
media joined the chorus
Excuse
last
me,
summer.
Senator Inhofe, we'll freeze,
I'm
we'll
asking-
freeze the time for a minute.
Oh, yes.
I'm just trying to make...
Take your time. We're freezing
No,
the
no,
time.
we're freezing the time, just for a minute. I want to talk to you a minute, please. Would you agree to let the Vice President answer your questions? And then if you want an extra few minutes at the end, I'm happy to give it to you, but we're not going to get anywhere.
Why don't we do this?
We're asking
Why don't we
good
do this?
questions.
At the end, you can have as much time as you want to answer
No, that
all of the
isn't the
questions.
rule of, you're not making the rules. You used to when you did this. You don't do this anymore. Elections have consequences. Elections have consequences, so I make the rules. But here's the thing. I want you to get your questions answered. I've promised you to give you an additional 3 minutes of time. But if you will allow the chair, if I believe the Vice President is wandering into another area, I will just say that quietly, and he will, I know, move on. He knows the rules here.
Well,
Senator,
you know the rules. Let me read to you what you said to Mr. Johnson.
Okay, we'll
he was
start
before
running
this
the
committee.
clock
He
now.
said, the fact is, I don't need to talk now. I don't want you to talk anymore. Now, I'm not going to be rude. I'm not going to do that. But that's what you did. And I only want to be able to get through my time. I can't do it
Go
if
ahead,
you
sir.
filibuster. All right,
Go ahead.
good. Now, it seems that everything is blamed on global warming. You talked about the fires in Oklahoma. Last summer, we had a heat wave, and everyone said, oh, that's proof it's global warming. Then we had a mild December. Oh, that's proof that global warming is taking place. Now, I wonder, how come you guys never seem to notice it when it gets cold? Now, if you put up chart number 2 there, this is for your benefit, Senator Clinton. This is Buffalo, New York. I have in my hand here the document from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. They've set records all over America in January, 183 cold records, 183 of them. This is a new record all over the America. That was all in 1 month. And I would just have to say that in our sake in Oklahoma, we had 3 days that were the coldest days in history. Where is global warming when you really need it? Now, what I'd like to do is also be aware that the debate took place last week in New York, and I'd like to have a brief thought about this. This is when the prominent group of 5 scientists and 1 doctor on each side of the issue had a chance to talk to survey their crowd. It was a very large crowd. 57.3% of the audience agreed with you that global warming is a crisis. About 29% said it wasn't. After the debate, it completely turned around. It's 46 to 42. Now, I think that that's all the more reason why there should be a lot more discussion on this. It was a huge shift. Now on science. You talked about science. And it's very interesting that when people don't want to talk about science in a debate format, in terms of how many scientists are on this side, how many on this side, what happens is you just say it's settled. I mentioned in my opening statement Claude Allegre. He was from France. Nir Shaviv from Israel. Reed Bryson. These are all people who were solidly on your side of the issue up until recently, and now they're not alarmists anymore. They both, all 3 of them, have come over to the other side. Now, if you put up chart number 3, there are literally hundreds of scientists on this chart. All of these scientists disagree with you. In addition to that, I'm sure you've heard this many times before because people are quite upset that the 60 scientists who were advising the Prime Minister 10 years ago of Canada, they said that, you know, we want you to join Kyoto, and so they did. Those same 60 scientists now are petitioning Prime Minister Harper of Canada to get out of the Kyoto Treaty, and they are saying, this is a direct quote, they're saying, if back in the mid-1990s we knew what we know today about climate, Kyoto would almost certainly not exist because we would have concluded that it wasn't necessary. And the last chart that I'll put up is one that everyone knows this. I think some of my colleagues may not be familiar with this person. His name is Richard Lindzen. He is the Sloan Professor of Atmospheric Science at MIT. He wrote an op-ed piece for the Wall Street Journal, and I will read it as you read it. It's not very flattering to you, Senator Gore, but this is what he said. A general characteristic of Mr. Gore's approach is to assiduously ignore the fact that the Earth and its climate are dynamic. They're always changing, even without external forces. To treat all change as something to fear is bad enough. To do so in order to exploit that fear is much worse. So we've got thousands of meteorologists, geologists, physicists, astrophysicists, climatologists, scientists who disagree with you. Are they all wrong and you're right?
Senator, thank you. I was sitting here trying to think what I could do or say that that might make it possible to reach out to you, and I'm serious about this. We've got a mutual friend named Doug Coe.
Mm-hmm.
I'd love to have breakfast with you sometime with Doug, just the three of us, and talk with you without the cameras and without the lights, and tell you why I feel so strongly about this.
Well, I think you've told us in your opening statement. It was very eloquent.
But anyway, you know, if there's a way that I could talk with you that would make a difference to you, I'd like to do it. But let me respond to your question.
Good.
The National Academy of Sciences here in this country and in the 16 largest or most developed countries in the world, the ones that have respected large national academies of science, all of them unanimously have expressed agreement with the consensus that I stated to you. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change that has had its fourth unanimous report in 15 years agrees with the consensus that I've stated to
Senator
you.
Gore, my time is almost expired completely. Are you aware of that?
If I could complete my
Well,
answer.
if you do, then that my time's expired. Are you
Well,
aware of that?
I can't help that, but because you went on for a long time. But I would like
no,
to.
I have 15 minutes.
I have.
You have had 30 minutes. I had 15. You've got to let me have my 15 minutes, Senator Gore.
If I could just.
I can respond to what you
complete my
said.
response.
Well, you've already done it. The National Academy of Sciences.
I actually haven't.
Senator, I will stop the clock and allow Senator Gore to complete, please,
Good.
and then
Thank
we'll go
you.
back to you.
Thank
Okay,
you.
go ahead.
I'll just give you one other example. The University of California did a very well-respected, well-picked-over, peer-reviewed study. The team was led by Professor Naomi Oreskes. They reviewed every single peer-reviewed scientific journal article for the previous 10 years on this topic. They took a very large sample of almost 10% of them, 928. About 25% of them did not deal, of the articles didn't deal with the central point of the consensus, some arcane matter. But of those that dealt with the main consensus, the number that disagreed with the consensus was 0. This is a very well-established and very strong scientific consensus. And it's not me saying it, it's what the scientific community is saying.
Okay, my response to that is that the first of all, every scientist that I named up here is a member of the National Academy of Sciences. They disagree with you. They disagreed with that statement. But the National Academy of Sciences, back in 1975, they had a very interesting observation. They said, however, asserting a finite possibility that a serious worldwide cooling could befall the Earth within the next 100 years. Exactly what they're saying now, except at that time it was not.
Could I comment on that?
In all respect, Senator Gore, we can't do that. You know that. I wanted to keep going on and discuss China, but it's virtually impossible to do now because we've used up too much time, and I'll ask you to do this.
Madam Chair, I would ask unanimous consent to give Mr. Inhofe another 2 minutes so that Mr. Gore can respond.
Oh, why don't you give it to Mr. Gore to respond?
You get 2, Mr. Gore gets 2. I would ask unanimous consent.
I'm going to object because here's the thing. What I'm going to do is allow, Senator, you will get your chance. Please.
I won't give it.
If you just trust me for 5 minutes, you'll be fine.
5 minutes.
He's going to lay
Madam
down
Chairman.
his rest of his questions in moments, and then I'm going to give the Vice President the time he needs to respond within reason. Okay? And then I'm going to go to Senator Klobuchar, and then we're going to try to get control of this hearing. Senator Inhofe, was that your last question?
Oh, no.
You have a minute then to go ahead and ask your questions. Why don't you lay them all down, and then he'll answer them. Go ahead. You have a minute now. An
1
additional
minute for my last, well, I already had 3 minutes.
Well, giving you another minute.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Well, I'll
Lay
skip
down
all
your
the
question.
questions. I had 15 minutes of questions, Senator Gore. I agree. Let's get together with Doug Coe and talk about it privately. But this is a public forum. People have to know. I've listed all the scientists who disagree with you, and you did not respond to that question. So I would just say that I hope people understand what the issue is, because a lot of people don't know the issue. A lot of people think the issue is global warming taking place. The issue is it man-made gases, anthropogenic gases, CO2 and that is the issue. Unfortunately, I think it's more of a money response than anything else. We have a lot of people pouring money into these things, and the George Soros, the Michael Moores, the Richard Bransons, and all of that. But what I'm going to do in the last time, since my time has expired, I'm going to ask you on your film, the last frame on your film, and it's kind of interesting because yesterday I ran into a parent of a student at a school in Maryland that said that her students were in an elementary school, were watching your movie under the instructions once every month. The last frame in that movie was, would you put that frame up? You're asking, and you've asked people all over America, are you ready to change your way of life? Are you ready to change the way you live? I would have to ask you that same question because we started my term on would you take a pledge to do that? I think the answer to that is no. But in terms of changing the way you live, I think it's very difficult for you to ask other people to do it unless you're willing to do it. Are you willing to do it?
We live a carbon neutral life, Senator, and both of my businesses are carbon neutral. We buy green energy. We do not contribute to the problem that I'm joining with others to try to help solve. We pay more for clean energy, and I think that utilities ought to provide more green energy that doesn't produce CO2. We are in the midst of installing solar panels. Again, I think that we ought to have a law that says communities and localities ought not be able to prevent that. I never made that public, by the way. The community where I live, it's a city within a city. I didn't want it because I asked them to change it, and they said we will. It just takes time. So these kinds of things are what people are going through all over this country. They're buying the new light bulbs. They're putting in more insulation. People are changing. People are changing. The American people are ready to help solve this problem. But we have to have legislation that takes away the right to pollute without any accountability or without paying a price for it. Because when we have cap and trade, when we have laws that allow us to use the market in our favor, then those of us who are part of the solution rather than part of the problem will be able to leverage what we're doing. I will respond to the other questions for the record out of courtesy to the remaining senators.
Thank you. Senator Klobuchar.
Vice President Gore, welcome to our committee.
Thank you.
It's not every day that our committee has an Academy Award winner testifying. More often, our witnesses have awards from important but not so glamorous